Someone dropped their wallet right beside my car on the ground yesterday, and they had it so jam-packed full of cash that I couldn't even fold it in half. I'm sure that's part of the reason they lost it. It was just so awkward to hold. So I brought it into customer service, and together we found the owner, and they were so happy that I had returned their wallet that they gave me a large chunk of that cash. And the moral of the story is that you do understand the use of they, them pronouns to refer to a singular person. You do, very clearly, and so does everyone else.
My religion says that being gay, bi, trans, lesbian is a sin.
Your religion also says that having sex during your period is a sin. How come you ignore that? Your religion also says that eating bacon is a sin. How come you ignore that? Your religion also says eating lobster is a sin. Cutting the sides of your hair is a sin. Wearing clothes made out of mixed fabrics is a sin. Getting a tattoo is a sin. A man trimming the edges of his beard is a sin. It says a woman is not to hold any position of authority and is to be quiet. That if a woman is not a virgin on her wedding night, she is to be stoned to death. And that planting two different kinds of seeds in the same field is a sin. But that's too hard for you, so you've decided that God didn't mean any of that, he only meant the being gay part. Listen, if you're going to spread hatred towards others by quoting the Bible at them, make sure that you first follow the entire thing, or shut the entire fuck up.
My best friend's boyfriend starts DMing me on Instagram. He confesses that he had a crush on me when we were in college together, and I told him that I did too. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. From that day on, he would DM me every single day and we would just flirt back and forth. I started feeling really guilty, and I told him one day I can't do this anymore. That's when he told me he also felt guilty and that the best thing was for us to stop talking, so we did. I was so sad. A few weeks passed by and my best friend asked me if she could have the apartment all to herself because she's planning a romantic dinner for him. I said yes, but I felt so jealous. I left the apartment because I realized that I was so in love with him. I went to the supermarket and ate a whole pack of Oreo cookies and went to the movies. I get a text message from my best friend asking me to come home immediately. My stomach sank and I thought she had found out. When I get there, she's crying, and she says that he broke up with her. I asked if he said why, and she said because he was in love with another woman. My stomach sank again. I was there with her the entire night while she cried, knowing her boyfriend left her because of me. Part 3. Best friend's boyfriend had broken up with her because of me. I didn't have the heart to tell her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. A few days later, she started going out on Tinder dates again. I could see that she was feeling better, so I decided to confess to her everything. And she told me she could tell that he and I liked each other. Then she told me I should date him. Well, I didn't waste any time. I sent him a text message and asked him if he wanted to meet up for dinner. And when we did, he asked me to be his girlfriend. We dated for 6 months before he proposed. He even got my name tattooed on his neck. The only problem is that my mom thinks he might do the same thing to me. I don't even want to think about that because I truly believe that he loves me. But let's hope not. I've been planning the wedding and I asked my best friend to come. Of course she said yes. She's super happy for me. And she actually has a boyfriend now. Do you guys think my fiance will end up doing the same thing to me?
My friend's mom tried to stab me and my sister. Story time. Yes, honey, you heard that right. She tried to stab us with a knife. So at the time, me and my sister were 8 and 9 years old. And we went to the pool every single day. And we eventually made friends with this boy. We're gonna call him Tomato. Then our parents ended up making friends with Tomato's mom. Like, they ended up becoming really good friends. And after a couple months, Tomato eventually asked me and my sister to spend the night. Well, our parents surprisingly said yes. This is the one time, and the one time only, I wish my parents would have said no. Well, anyways, we went to the sleepover. By the way, it was our first sleepover we've ever been to. So we get there around 5 and we're having a blast. We made forts, we watched DT, we ate popcorn. For our first sleepover, it was going wonderful. However, the whole time we were at this sleepover, his mom was in her room. 11 p.m. comes around and the mom comes out of her room, smelling like alcohol. She was drunk. And she comes out and she starts screaming at us. She thought we were home invaders. Then she goes in the kitchen and grabs...
Story time. A girl named Akira Kendrick sent me this story, and the background of it is that her dad was very abusive to her mother, and her mother got custody of Akira, and her dad was not happy about that. Anyway, so Akira was with her aunt and her cousins at her grandmother's house, all on her mother's side, and her dad stops by to say hello. And Akira's outside playing with her cousin, and her dad comes up to her and grabs her arm and says, "Do you want to go to Walmart with me?" And at the time, she's only 7, so all she hears is toy aisle, so she says, "Yes, let's go." So they get in the car, they head to Walmart, she gets some really nice pom-poms, and then he says, "Okay, let's go back to your grandmother's house." So he starts driving and he gets on the highway, and Akira knows that her grandmother's house is right around the corner from Walmart, so he does not need to get on the highway. So she says, "Dad, where are we going?" And he gets really mad and says, "Shut up, sit down, it does not matter." So Akira's in the back seat, she's really scared, and she just shuts her mouth. So after being in the car for a while, they eventually arrived at this really old, abandoned beat up house. And when they walk in, Akira sees about 25 people and she does not know any of them. Her dad brings her to a room, puts her in a little closet, throws her some toys and her pom-poms and says, play. Part 2 is coming right now. Part 2 of Akira's dad literally kidnapping her. So when they get to the house, Akira is really scared. She doesn't know any of these 25 people. Her dad brings her to a room, throws her in a closet, puts some toys in there and says play. So after about an hour of being in a little closet with some toys, she finally decides to get up and go look for her dad. So she opens the door and starts looking around and there is no one in the house. There is not even a single trace of somebody ever being there. So of course she starts freaking out and crying. She doesn't know where she is. She's so far away from her grandmother's house and she doesn't have a phone. And so eventually, after 3 hours, she hears somebody. She looks up and her dad is standing there and he says, come on, let's go, the cops are outside. So basically, Akira's aunt called the cops and they had a search warrant for him. They ended up finding her dad and they said to him, if you don't take us to her, you will go to jail. And obviously, from what I just said, he finally took them to her at this random old abandoned house and they found her. And they ended up putting him in jail anyways, because why not? 2 years in jail and 1 year on probation. Don't steal children, people. Don't steal them.
Story time. My boyfriend cheated on me with my brother. By the way, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So this took place in middle school. I was in 7th grade. And one day there was a new kid in my class. His name was Dylan. And I like making people feel welcome. So I was just talking to him and showing him around the school. And after that, I just ended up getting his number and we started texting. After texting for a few months, he finally asked me out, so I was super happy. Then I started inviting him over my house, but I would tell my parents he's just a friend because I was too young to date. But he would always be over my house. Since my brother was only a year older, he would always be hanging out with us as well. So during this time, soccer season came up, so I couldn't really hang out after school anymore. So Dylan and my brother would just continue hanging out without me. I didn't really think much about it, but one day my practice got canceled. Part 2. Like I said in part 1, my soccer practice got canceled early due to the weather, so I got to come home early. And the first thing that I do when I get home is run into my brother's room, because usually Dylan and my brother are just playing video games, but not this time. I walked into them making out. So at this point, I didn't even know how to react because neither one of them has ever came out to anybody. I was just overall confused and a little pissed off. It turns out they both had feelings for each other and they both came out at the same time. And I didn't speak to either one of them for like a month, but I got over it because I realized how much my brother really loves Dylan. But now fast forward 8 years, they are still together and they plan on getting married soon. If you want to send me a story time, send it to my Instagram at @anacrylic.
Time about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My husband actually cheated on his wife with me. I started working at his company when I was 18. We started an affair and I knew it was wrong, but at the time I was very broke. He offered me a wealthy lifestyle and believe it or not, we fell in love. So when he and I got married, I was still 18. He was much older than me, he was 42. Everyone in town of course started hating me because I broke up the family. His wife couldn't even see my face. My husband already had 2 kids when we got married. One was 12, one was 15. So they were much closer in age to me than he was. The kids and I got along super well. I was their cool stepmom and we had a lot of fun. When I turned 20, the oldest boy came to live with us. And I think you already know what happens. My husband was always traveling for work. That means my stepson and I would be home alone most of the time. One night we decided to watch a movie and about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said, my husband was always traveling for work. So my stepson and I would be alone in the house a lot. One night we were watching a movie and it just happened. After that, we couldn't get enough of each other. He even started skipping class so that he could spend more time with me. We basically turned into boyfriend and girlfriend when my husband wasn't there. When my husband would come home from his work trips, we would pretend like everything was normal. One day after my husband got back from one of his work trips, he found one of his son's socks in our bed. He asked me how it got there, but I told him it probably got stuck in there while I was washing the sheets. A few months passed by and my stepson and I are still hooking up. This is when I realized that I hadn't gotten my period in a few months. My period was always irregular, so I didn't think anything of it. My stepson went to the pharmacy to get me a pregnancy test. It came out positive. But the big problem is that my husband can't have children anymore. How was I going to explain this to my husband when
Reasons why people thought I was a hoe in high school. For this story, I was 100 million % the shitty person in the equation. And I don't deny that at all. Like, it was so fucked up that I did this. But I was 14 years old and I handled it the best way I could after the fact. So I was friends with this girl, we'll call her Barb. And me and Barb were in the same gym class. And she would always tell me about this kid that she was talking to. We'll call him Jacob. And me and Jacob had already known each other because we went to middle school with each other. And like, we would flirt here and there, but like, it was never anything serious. So then one day I was hanging out with my other friend, we'll call her Chelsea. P.S. Chelsea was the girl from my other story time where she slept with 2 boys in one night. So Chelsea wanted me to go with her and hang out with like this boy toy that she had and then his group of friends. And lo and behold, Chelsea's boy toy was friends with Jacob. So we all go to like this abandoned church. We do some illegal things, not gonna lie. And the entire time, Jacob was just like flirting with me, like mad hard. And I pulled Chelsea aside and I'm like, oh my god, like Jacob definitely wants to get with me, but I don't know what to do because of Barb.